Hey guys, last week we talked about buying a knife. This week is all about sharpening that knife. There's many ways to sharpen a knife. You can do it professionally, you can do it electrically, manually, with a stone, many ways. So we're gonna go over these differences of how to sharpen your knife, and then at the end we will also show you or give you some guidelines on how to sharpen your knife with a whetstone, which is my preferred way of sharpening. So let's dive into these. If your knife is only slightly dull, you're going to want to use a honing rod or a sharpening steel. Now, despite the name sharpening steel, it actually doesn't sharpen your knife. What it does is it hones the blade so that it realigns the edge. That's pretty much it. So I like to use this on my stainless steel knives just to give it a little refresh before I start my day at work. Now, there's different types. There's steel, there's ceramic, so you're going to have to dive into a little research to see which one is best for the knife that you have. An easy way to sharpen your knife is to get it professionally done. You can do this once or twice a year. It kind of depends on how much you beat up your knife. Now check your local knife shop to see if they offer sharpening services. I personally know that Burnell Cutlery in San Francisco and Perfect Edge in San Mateo offer sharpening services. Obviously, COVID times, definitely call in, check in, and see if they still offer it. They might have suspended it. Yeah, check it, because it's honestly easy. Bring it in, pay for it, take it back, and it's really sharp. A popular choice for home cooks is an electric or manual sharpener. Now, these are very simple to use. Put your knife in the slot and pull it through. The thing I don't like about this is that they take away so much steel or metal from your knife just to create a new edge, and in the end kind of decreases the life of the knife, which is not good. I haven't used one of these for over a decade, and I hear they make better ones, but it is still on the bottom of my list of ways to sharpen your knife. If you do go this route, or if you have one of these, that's okay. Just make sure you follow the directions of that sharpener, and also be aware if you're looking to buy one of these that if your knife has a full bolster, electric sharpener or a manual sharpener may not work for your knife. Finally, my favorite way of sharpening knife is using a whetstone. That's whetstone with an H. The process of sharpening with a stone is very soothing, it's meditative, it's relaxing for me, which is why I enjoy it. So the only con I have for sharpening with a stone is that it's quite hard to master or get good at, just because it's difficult to hold the correct angle to sharpen the knife. When I first started to sharpen with a stone, I was super overwhelmed. I was afraid I would break my knife or break the stone, but I started to practice a lot and got better at it. And I figured out which grit combination worked with each stone that I have, and it was great. If you're starting out with stones for the first time, use a knife that you kind of don't care about, get a feel for it, and then later on, when you're comfortable, you can start sharpening your nice knives. Earlier, I mentioned grit levels. Stones come in grit levels, and there are a very wide range of them. First, your rough or coarse stones range from 100 to 700. You're going to use these for damaged knives, for nicked knives, for knives that are extremely dull. Next, we have our medium stones, which range from 800 to 3000 grit level. That's quite a big range, but the majority of your work will be done on a 1000 grit level stone. Finally, you have your finishing or polishing stones, which start at a grit level of 4000 and can go extremely high. For the majority of the people, you won't need anything over 6000 or 8000. So a sort of little guideline in a guideline. If you're using a knife that is mostly cutting meats, for example, boning knives, honeski knives, which is the Japanese boning knife, then you're gonna wanna stop sharpening at the 4000 grit level. Now, if you're doing vegetables or your santokus, your gyotus, your chef knives, all the general purpose knives, you can go up to 8000. I usually take those knives to 8000 just because that makes cutting through vegetables and everything much easier, much faster, much more fluid, and it's badass sharp. So the last thing about sharpening stones is that some are soaking stones. So you soak it for maybe 30, 40 minutes or until bubbles come out, or you'll soak it for 5 minutes, or some are even called splash and go, where you splash it and then you go. So now you know all about stones. We're gonna go down to the kitchen and share some basics on how to sharpen a knife with a whetstone. Most of it is very all preference. The main thing, the main concept you take away of sharpening a stone is that you have to keep the angle consistent. That's it. And let's head to the kitchen. I talk too much. I'm sorry. Let's go. To set up our sharpening station, you're gonna need a coarse grit stone. We have a 300. Our medium grit stone, we have a 1000. And our finishing stone, we have an 8000. You'll need a tub of water, a brick for elevation, a couple towels, a liner for traction, a pan, and of course, a very dull knife. With a tub of water, you're gonna soak any stones that need a pre-soak before sharpening. For our station, I like to put a towel underneath the pan. The pan's really for any wet stuff that kind of falls off the stones. I like to use a brick for a little added elevation, then wrap the brick with rubber liner so that my sharpening stones don't slip and slide. Next, let's wet our knife, hydrate the top of our stone, and we're ready to begin. First, our grip. I'm right-handed, so I keep the knife always in my right hand. I choke up on the knife. You can use a pinch grip, but I always keep my index finger and my thumb on the blade so I can control the angle. Next, the most important thing, the angle of the knife. Start by laying the blade flat on the stone, then raise the spine side until the edge side feels flush to the stone. I like this method because each knife is different. Some are 15 degrees, some are 12 degrees, and with this, you'll know exactly what is best for your knife. There are other ways to find the angle. You can use 1 or 2 coins to help you find it. You can also use the Sharpie method, so explore. Next, we have some safety tips. It's really important you don't have any fingers laying below the level of the edge of the knife. You never want that. Just in case the knife slips, you don't want to cut off any fingers. Next, you don't want any of your pushing fingers to be touching any of the stone. Just in case it gets caught in between the edge and the stone, you might cut off some fingerprints. Next, we have pressure. The general guideline is to always put 5 to 6 pounds of pressure on the blade as you sharpen. If you don't know what it is, use a scale, see what 5 to 6 pounds feels like. You also always want to be pushing away from the knife's edge. If you have to push, pick up the knife and go back to the starting point, that's fine. This isn't a race. Now we have the stroke. You can do this many ways. This is where preference comes in. You can work the knife from tip to butt end in one full stroke, or you can work the knife in sections from tip to middle sections to butt section. I prefer the second. For the tip, sharpening it can be pretty tricky. What you want to do is lift the handle 45 degrees, and as you sharpen, lower the handle to the correct angle for the knife. You also want to move in the direction of the arc of the tip of the knife. It's a little difficult to describe, but I hope seeing it helps. Now for the other side. You'll know when you're done with one side when you've created a burr. To feel for a burr, gently place your thumb on the side of the blade opposite to the one you just sharpened. Then slide your thumb away from the edge, moving perpendicular to the edge. To sharpen the other side, it's very easy just to switch hands and do the exact same thing on the left hand. But if you're like me, quite uncomfortable with that, I just flip the knife over and make sure I have index finger and thumb on the blade so that I can control that consistent angle. So now the motion of sharpening would be a pull rather than a push. The only tricky part about this grip is the butt end. It's a little tricky to sharpen the butt end of this knife. I found it comfortable to point the tip of the knife 45 degrees towards me and continue to sharpen the butt end of the knife. This allows me to keep the consistent angle from tip to butt on this whole side. When you've successfully created a burr on this side, you're pretty much done with this stone. The last thing we're going to do with this stone is deburr the knife. Perform long, smooth strokes from tip to butt end, alternating each side until there is no burr. Now you're ready for your medium grit stone, where the process is exactly the same. If you're starting out with sharpening stones, just take your time. You don't have to go fast. When you get comfortable, you can speed it up as much as you want. When you're finished with the medium grit stone, next is your finishing or your polishing stone. The only difference when sharpening with this stone is that your pressure will be very light, almost to no pressure at all. You're not trying to take off any metal, you're just trying to get a nice finish to your edge. Once you've finished with all your stones, you're going to want to test to see how sharp your knife is by cutting some paper. So I hope that gives you a sense of how to sharpen with a whetstone. I know at first it'll be a little intimidating, maybe overwhelming, but just keep practicing at it and you'll start to get better, and it can be a very relaxing and meditative process for you too. All the stones and the gadgets are linked down below. Don't forget to join us on Scene, which is our home base. We can chat about knives, knife sharpening. You can get early access to all our content. If you have any questions or comments of any topics that we cover on this channel, you can reach us on Scene directly. So it's a great way to be part of the community, be part of the conversation. You'll meet people that are different levels of yogis, different levels of cooks, and we'll just share our knowledge, and it's a community of all of us learning together, which is great. If you like this video, if it helped you, I hope it helped you, then give us a thumbie, hit a subscribe. We'll be putting out cooking content on YouTube every Sunday, on the Sunday, for all Sundays. So we'll see you guys on the next one. Bye.